With so many churches struggling to keep the doors open and the pews occupied, does Chicago really need another church? The answer is yes, according to Jamie Frazier, pastor of the newly organized Lighthouse Church of Chicago located in the South Loop. Joining me to talk about this exciting, innovative, and vibrant place of worship is the founder and pastor of the Lighthouse Church of Chicago, Jamie Frazier, a Vanderbilt University graduate and student at Lutheran School of Theology. We also welcome Al Herod, a member of the church's Pastoral Advisory Council, who also serves as the Community and Discipleship Task Force leader and is a longtime civil and human rights activist. And we welcome Raymond Wise, a praise team member at Lighthouse Church. Pastor Frazier, please tell us about the Lighthouse Church and what makes it different.
So the Lighthouse Church started in, say, February of last year. At that time, I had about 100 to 150 one-on-ones with people, talking to them about the voice of God and how I was hearing God encouraging me and other people to come together and start a congregation. And starting in September of last year, we started having monthly launch team meetings and Bible studies. In April of this year, 7 months ago, we began worship Thursday nights together. And the goal of Thursday nights together was to offer folks not only passionate worship, but also engaging conversation, and finally an inspiring message. And my hope is that this will be what it is now, and it will continue to be, an African-American congregation that's steeped in the Black church tradition of prophetic preaching and rich gospel music that welcomes all of God's children and is affirming of same-gender loving and transgendered folks, and really helps to bring African-American heterosexuals and SGL and trans folks together in intentional Christian community.
Al, please tell us, what compelled you about Lighthouse Church? Why did you want to become a part of it?
I was introduced by a friend who had been in attendance. I'm kind of the newbie, and went through and I felt the love, like Raymond had mentioned, from everyone that was part of the congregation, and I loved the words that came through from the pastor.
A really important message for your church is passionate about Jesus and serious about justice. Please tell us more about that. What does that mean for the Lighthouse Church?
Sure. We say this every week in worship. I think these two can attest to it. When we say that we're passionate about Jesus, what that means is that we follow the life, teachings, and ministry of Jesus Christ. And we see those three things come together in understanding the greatest love story in all of history. The story of a God who has come, lived, died, risen, and is soon to come again. And because of that love story, that then leads us to be serious about justice. So we're an African-American congregation that welcomes all people, people of all sexual identities and gender identities, people of all ethnic backgrounds, people across the economic spectrum. We try to welcome all of God's children, and not only welcome all of God's children into the church, but bring that welcome outside of the church. So we stand up for things like marriage equality. We stand up for gender equality. We stand up for those who are struggling and fighting poverty. And we think that these are struggles and fights to which God has called us, not in spite of the gospel, but because of the gospel.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now, Raymond, a very important part of the church, the community, the life that is clearly flowing through you guys is the worship, the music. Please tell us, why is the music so important to the worship experience?
Absolutely. Music is communication. That's something that's deeply rooted in us as an African-American people. I mean, if you go back to history, thinking about the drums, that's how they communicated. And that has become a center of what we do in Black churches as a whole. But not only that, but that also allows us to really communicate with God. That we are fellowshipping and singing and doing it together, but at the end of the day, that really is a illustration of our relationship with God. And that is also a great way that music is international. It doesn't matter where you go. Music is something that draws everybody. And with that being said, when you have that relationship with God and that music intertwined with that, it makes a complete difference in the atmosphere. So it's very imperative that we do have great worship. So make sure that you all come out at 7 p.m. on Thursday nights.
Yes.
1800 South Perry Street. But yes, so it's definitely the worship is one of the focal points of the ministry, because that's how we fellowship and communicate with each other, but also have that intercession with God as well.
Let's welcome Chris Percy into the discussion. He's Lighthouse Church's Outreach Task Force leader, a Justice Task Force member, and is on the Pastoral Advisory Council. As a member of the Justice Task Force, you recently went to the March and Rally in Springfield. Please tell us about that. What is a great takeaway from that experience?
Well, first of all, you know, the first part of that trip that was great was the trip down there, the bus ride down there, right? Which we cannot talk about right now. This is an after show moment that we talk about. But just being together with folks, folks from every nationality, you know, coming together for calls. When we finally got down there, it was rainy, it was cold, you know, we really didn't quite know what was going on. You know, when you get there, you're sort of disoriented. But the sense of community, right, which is part of the reason why I come to the church, was just overwhelming almost. And we got down there and we heard people singing and folks going to lobby their representatives, and folks just having a good time with all kind of rainbow flags and folks with rainbow hair. You know, it was great. Just the freedom and the sense of community was overwhelming, and it was great.
Many same gender-loving persons come to the church broken and in hurt and in need. Maybe you could give us a little idea of how the Lighthouse Church would like to respond to this need.
The first thing is, I love the pastor. And for me, pastoring is more than just preaching on Thursday nights, because that's when we worship. It's also providing pastoral care. And so one of the things that I love to do is to sit down and engage in coffee and conversation. And I think that that's a place where a lot of healing happens. I want this to be a space in which folks know that as a pastor, I'm accessible. And I love to sit down and hear people's stories, hear their laughter, their sorrow, their tears, their anxieties, their worries, and also their joys. And I think a part of what will bring about healing is having those one-on-one conversations. Secondly, I think we do a good job of creating social spaces in which we're able to get to know one another and build relationships. And that helps to create an atmosphere that's safe. And then finally, it has to be about more than just healing. For me, church functions a lot like a gas station, and we don't get filled up just to sit at the gas station. We get filled up because we have places to go. And for me, this church is tooling people so that they can go on the journey of life. You come to the Lighthouse so that you can receive nourishment to go back out onto the sea. And for me, what going back out onto the sea means is that we're doing the phone banking, we're fighting for legislative change, not just around marriage equality, but around violence issues, around poverty issues, around gender inequality issues. And that is what I think makes the church distinctive, and that is what I think can bring about the healing of same-gender loving and trans folks.
Thank you so much for coming, for sharing your vision, for sharing what you're doing about social justice. Thank you, Pastor Frazier. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Chris. We also thank Raymond for joining us today. I'm Leah Smith for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.